A good conversation can shift the direction of change forever. Would you leave it to chance? Join the authors of Design to Change and explore this series of conversations with designers and event owners. Driven by the need and conversations with event owners and event designers who use the event canvas around the world, this series explores the depths of conversations to elevate your abilities to look and act beyond the now. Episodes are hosted by Ruud Janssen, Roel Frissen, Dennis Lehrer, and Paul Rukens, with illustrious changemakers, designers, and pioneers in the field of design and beyond. To explore these conversations and additional content, visit designtochange.online. For now, let's start the conversation. Conversations.
Welcome to another episode of our Design to Change podcast. And today in our midst, we have Saamer Mansoor. And Saamer and I, Roel, my name is Roel Frissen, and my colleague Ruud Janssen is also joining. Saamer and myself met each other at IMEX at Smart Monday, where all the smart people come together, at a session we did together with Marina Bay Sands, where we actually did an EDC level 1 workshop. And Saamer was one of the people in the group, and a very active participant, but also he hung out a little bit later with us. And we shared some stories, and there was a very interesting conversation based on each other's interests, but also mutual visions for the future and how we see the future. So we had a few dinners together, and that it resulted into something like we need to have Saamer on the podcast. So that is, I'll introduce Saamer, and then I'll let you guys talk a little bit. But Saamer is originally from Saudi Arabia. But then moved at a young age to Texas and studied at the University of Texas. If I remember right, he lives close to Detroit at the Canadian border, and after studying at UT Texas, where he studied mechanical engineering and shifted very fast after to coding, and that resulted in, after a few jobs, resulted in during COVID, that he actually helped the deaf people in the United States because of an act, I think it's called ADA. And he said, like, okay, everybody wearing mouth caps, how can we actually help these people to understand other people, where lip reading is not so easy anymore, right? So he started creating an app based on AI, which is actually help these people understand each other and have a better conversation. And that resulted in something super cool, which I experienced myself, is that now you have a company called what is it? BeAware Deaf Assistant, but actually that is much larger than that, because it's also captioning conferences, and that is all very interesting, because you use AI, like many of you, but also you use AI on one device. That is what I understood from our conversations, and maybe I said it wrong at some point, but I leave it to you to complete it or to correct me. But that is my introduction of Saamer. Welcome, Saamer.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, Roel and Ruud. Thank you so much for inviting me to this event. It's first of all, yes, we met on the Monday of IMEX, and the people that I met actually at the event were some of the most active people. They, almost like influencers in the field of events, and so I was able to make a pretty good network over there. So that was pretty awesome. Um, Briefly about myself, I am Saamer Mansoor. I'm the founder of, like Roel said, BeAware Deaf Assistant. It's a tool that's used by deaf and hard of hearing people around the world. Actually, a lot of people in the Netherlands also use our tools. So Germany, Netherlands, and the United States are some of the biggest users of the Deaf Assistant app. It's actually translated into all these different languages, and it was picked up by a lot of blogs in the Netherlands too. And so that's how, like, people started using it in the Netherlands. And yes, so that was in 2021. We created tools for the deaf and hard of hearing community. And one of the key tools in that is that it allows for you to convert your phone into an alerting device. So let's say you're deaf and your baby is crying. How do you know your baby's crying? So you can click a button, lock your phone. It'll flash an LED, it'll vibrate your watch whenever your baby cries or whenever the doorbell rings. And so, it resonated with so many people because they would initially pay a lot of money to buy these products, plug it into the wall, charge them. But now there was, for the first time, a tool that could actually, prevent that. And then we added a lot of other tools to it as people asked us for more features. And then fast forward 2 more years, like in 2023, there were professors who, from the George Washington University, they were asking us that they were not able to use the Deaf Assistant app with their older students who were in the back of the classroom. And so, first of all, we were stumped that there was an event setting trying to use, the Deaf Assistant app that's meant for one-on-one communication. And so that's what gave birth to conference captioning. And so conference captioning, as of today, it is the fastest application that can do captioning and live translation. It takes advantage of your phone. So you download our AI onto your device, and for captioning, so you choose the accuracy that you want, and then you choose the translations that you want. So you download only that AI onto your phone or your computer or your iPad. It does all the AI work on your device and it just sends the captions to people's devices. So there's nothing faster than this in order to be able to get translations onto people's devices.
That's amazing, Saamer. So we've never met in person, and it's always interesting to hear the enthusiasm, right? So last week we were back in the Netherlands. Roel and Dennis and I, our business partners, we're meeting, and you hear the story secondhand, right, from the enthusiasm of application. Now, um, at the same time, we have a question that was asked at the beginning in the intro, which I'd like to ask you as well, right? Which is this question from the Design to Change book. A good conversation can shift the direction of change forever. Would you leave it to chance, Saamer?
Yeah, that's a great question. So honestly, so I knew that Rule was going to be at the event, the Monday event. And so I joined the class because I was like, okay, I want to be able to meet Rule. And so, I was able to do the class. I was able to meet so many people. And then, luckily, Rule had some issues with the boxes
Oh,
outside the classroom. And so I was able to help him out because obviously he didn't have an international telephone number. And so I was able to make phone calls for him. So like that just worked out perfectly. And yeah, you definitely definitely never leave it to chance. But then at the same time, like I understand if you're shy or scared of, having that conversation. I do sometimes I feel shy as well, so I don't blame anyone for not taking that chance.
Wow.
so when you first kind of came across, and I'm interested to hear a little bit more about, obviously your, what triggered you to develop this Be Aware, like this deaf assistant at first, right? And you already described how it went from one-on-one communication to the communication in the classroom to events-based settings at conferences like at IMEX America, where you basically are at the epicenter of where all of the event owners and event designers kind of hover for a couple of days, right? Smart Monday being the pre-day to a 3-day trade show with 17,000 people in this industry. Um, what what did you observe when you went to this event design certificate program and surrounded by 40 others learning at the same time a language around event design, right? Because I suppose our incapacity to be able to communicate um, when hearing is not functioning as it is, hopefully, with the people that are listening to this podcast. Um, what what transpired or what triggered you to start this development?
So I think, if we look at the Monday, there were people from so many different countries over there, and I would say there were at least like 15, 20 countries rule at that classroom, even though there were maybe like 75 students or so, um, or 100 students. Yeah, so it was extremely diverse and different. Not everyone in the room spoke, English as a first language, isn't it? I mean, a rule is English like your second or third language or fourth, if I remember.
So I speak four languages, but I think I would say it's my second language. Yes.
Okay, yeah, yeah. So like, we're such a diverse, like the world is very diverse, and each of us even um, it serves an even more diverse population. So, for example, some of the people that were there, some of the event organizers that attended, they were from, Taiwan, and they were specifically organizing events for the Taiwanese community, and so we all serve such a diverse population with so many diverse needs that if you look at it from your perspective, it's amazing that you guys have created this uh, language to communicate how events can be designed, you know, and then at the same point for us, it's like we're able to help people include attendees of different languages, of different abilities.
Nice.
And so let me give an example of the opposite truth of something that I just experienced at the PCMA conference in Rotterdam. It's something that people may have come across more, but that's really something to create awareness, but also a way to become more conscious of this, right? So there was a station called the Sign Language Coffee Bar. I don't know if you've come across that,
Oh, I have.
in which um, um, fantastic coffee was being made by baristas, but the baristas were deaf, or they were
Nice.
pretending to be deaf, but I think they were really deaf. And
Yeah.
in order to order a coffee, what you had to do is, press on a screen the actual order that you would like. But instead of it ordering, it gave you a little video of the sign language of ordering that specific type of coffee, as well as some additional words like, thank you, or, how are you doing today, or just some very generic introductions to sign language. And
No.
um, it was probably one of the hottest tickets for coffee at this conference because it was a conversation sparker and starter. And it reminded me of how difficult it is to learn a language because just the coffee order, and then I had to look again at the second video for the thank you. Now I remember because I practiced a couple of times, but it was a really, it's like a confrontational moment, right? When you do not speak a language or cannot get your message across in whichever way it might be, you can still communicate using other mediums or things like you've created. And I see on your website it works in over 25 languages where there's an alerting tool and there's different things to get also in-person events to without latency to try to to understand each other and to get messages across. Um, this development has gone really quickly, I suppose, for you as well. Could you share a little bit about the development and where you are right now and how it's being applied?
Yeah. So I mean, that's a great story. And one story that I wanted to talk about briefly also is I was at the CES, you guys probably know of, at Las Vegas,
Yeah.
and they had an accessibility competition. So at the accessibility competition, you'd expect, some sort of accessibility for the event. And this was in 2024. So this is
Mhm.
not even like 10 years ago.
Mhm.
And there was no sign language interpretation, there was no captioning or translation at that event because they had scheduling issues, and they didn't have any backup. And so at the accessibility competition, there was no accessibility provided, which is obviously like really sad and unfortunate.
Mhm.
Which goes to show like, that we're still trying to solve so many challenges in the industry. Um, Going back to your question about development, we I wouldn't say that we are we've been able to develop super fast. Like I would say like 2 years is quite a bit of time, especially like for a software company. But in terms of, developing it, what we have been trying to follow is a product-led growth approach. That's what they call it. So where you create an initial product, and then you have all these like 200,000 ideas for where the product can go, but you don't do all 200,000. You only build what people are asking for. So if
Mm.
someone says, "Oh, can you, do this?" and you're like, "Yeah, sure," and then you set up a meeting with them in a week, but you have that feature within it. And so we've kept only focusing on features that people really want. And then one of the biggest features that people wanted, especially from an events perspective, was being able to not use the internet in order to
Mm.
do the AI work, especially for people who want to project the captions or the translations on a screen. They don't want to use the internet because the internet has lag and all these other issues. The, internet can just go down. But because of that, we really focused on this, and this is our niche. No one else really does it this way, unless you have to buy or rent their equipment. But we just allow you to use your equipment, and so we really stand out in the industry through this.
Yeah. So
Right.
this especially for events, I imagine, we travel across the world with our events. Data roaming is not cheap, right, for participants to conferences, let alone the reliability and the latency that you were talking about. So I think this is very interesting to see that, an on-device application that's disconnected can still provide these functions because it now resides on your device, right? Whether it's, you said it, a phone, a tablet or a desktop.
Yep,
Um,
exactly. So,
mm,
just to give you an example, so earlier methods, they would require you to send an audio stream, which is, pretty heavy.
yeah.
Uh, but, you're basically just sending text. If you want to be able to enable like certain extra functionalities, you're just sending text, which is like, listening to a song over 2 hours, one song over 2 hours. So it's extremely low data usage.
Mm, yeah.
So how does it help? How does it help conference organizers? And you already highlighted a few of them. Now, how does it highlight? How does it help them?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So one of the things that helps greatly is during an event, especially like if you look at some of the competitors, they have a really bad um, you know, word in the industry because during the event, the translation speed ends up going to 12 to 20 seconds. So now, you're saying a joke and then the
Hmm.
people are laughing in Spanish 20 seconds later. You know what I mean? And so it really like disconnects the message. It doesn't allow you to engage the audience. Because of that reason, people or conference organizers don't even design projecting the captions and the translations on the screen. They because they realize how terrible it is, they just tell people to just download it on their phones instead.
Oh.
So it really
Uh,
opens up a lot of opportunities to the conference organizer.
yeah, I agree. So that is it's latency, it's speed, it's yeah, getting a joke right. So the timing of your speech. I recently did two sessions in Beijing, one in Beijing and one in China, and Shanghai in China, where Wordly helped us translate. And I was actually surprised by the speed of it as such, but there was some latency to it, right? But yeah, that was bearable and it was good enough. Um, what is the difference between such an application and yours?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when you were using the tool, at the same time, there weren't many other events happening. But at a conference, usually there's 9 or 10 events happening at the same time. And Wordly's servers are basically being, hit by 10 different audio streams and it slows down significantly. So when you're doing, a one-off, it kind of works, it doesn't have too many hiccups, but then, at an actual conference, that's when you actually see the negative effect.
So enough plugging for your beautiful app. I tried it a few times, but one of the things I was interested in, and one is I was fascinated by the way you actually were triggered to develop this, right? Then saw applications into the conference and events market. So maybe that is the first piece of the question. Like, can you give me a little bit of like what was COVID for you and what did really trigger this? And the second question would then be in a few years' time you've developed this, but then you're slowly coming into this market, and how difficult is that or how easy is that? Um, and what you see as barriers of entry in this market.
Yeah, these are, great questions. So first of all, you talked about like what was COVID like? Um, I would say, COVID was kind of weird for a lot of us, especially if you were not, on the frontline worker. You were just trying to understand where your place is. Yeah, you like sanitize all your groceries, but you know, you sanitize your hands a million times. But it's like, okay, how am I contributing to society? And so, me and my friends, we came together and we were trying to look for to create tools because we were all experienced in accessibility, app development. And so we were looking at how to create an impact in to a minority community that would help them in their everyday lives. And so, we were looking at different communities that might need help in some way. And then, we all had some sort of connection with the deaf and hard of hearing community. So my mom was hard of hearing, aunt, uncle, and then some of us had taken sign language classes, had a mother that was profoundly deaf. Um, and so we decided, okay, we want to help this community in their everyday lives. And then it was like, okay, how do we want to help them? Like, what do we want to build? And so we initially thought of like creating a device that they would have to purchase. And then we were like, wait, why create another device? Maybe we can just help them use their phones. And so we found out that, yeah, indeed, we could actually convert your phone into an alerting device. And it was like, what? No way. And so, we drew some designs, shared it with people in the community to see if they resonated with it, and they seemed to like it a lot. We made changes. We did so many iterations. We actually talked to over 100 people, and that gave birth to the Deaf Assistant. And we kept making improvements. There were some issues, and it eventually we were number one on Y Combinator's Hacker News. So that's for people who don't know, it's where people share new technology with like people in the indie development community, you can say, and people, give you advice and share it and stuff. And so that really helped explode the Deaf Assistant. And we had, like I said, we had bloggers from Netherlands pick up our post from Y Combinator's Hacker News. We had no idea. And then, we just like kept growing, and then Apple actually also eventually featured our app. So yeah, that's basically what COVID was like. Like it was like trying to figure out where we are and how we can make an impact. And then to your second question, what was your second question again?
The second question is more like you develop something for
Yeah,
a minority group,
yeah. What is the
which is
barrier?
great, and then you saw apparently opportunities merging that into other industries or other silos. And that is always what fascinates us, is that our industry, or is there an industry, events and conference industry,
Yeah,
um, might seem very closed, or right, people know each other. You have to maybe, or maybe that is not that fact at all for software, right? But for other
Yeah.
services, it really matters if you know people. And
Yeah.
I'm just checking in, like, how was that? How was the what kind of barriers of entry did you face, or are you still facing? And how easy is it to get into this industry?
Yeah. So I think, eventually we realized that, during COVID, people on Zoom calls, they're able to use the captions, but then when they go in person, they don't have captions in person. And so it was like, okay, this is like an easy way for you to be able to set up captions, almost like, Zoom for in-person events. And then in terms of barriers to entry, I would say like, so some of our competitors are ruthless with their sales. They're really, really good with sales. For example, like I went to IMEX and I spoke with organizations, and they were saying that they have 3 years exclusive deals with our competitors. I was like, 3 years? And you actually signed that agreement? No way. And so like it's pretty wild like learning about it. And what I learned is that it really depends on the relationships that you make. The events industry is very heavily um, dependent on relationships. And so, you can technically, uh, get through in the market, but you have to be really good at, making relationships and, really talking to people, getting to know people.
True. That assumption, at least our perspective, that is also perceived as being your perspective, and you have to get to know people. And then again, we have seen for instance, sorry to go back to COVID again, we've seen some software companies grow super fast in those times, right? It was like amazing how some little one-person companies on working under Ethic, and then that morphed into something like yeah, multi-million or multi-billion dollars.
Yeah, Zoom itself. Zoom is a great example. Like
Yeah.
they were a
Yeah.
super smart company. Yeah.
But Zoom was already very big, but there's some other players. I don't know if they even exist now, but it doesn't really matter, right? So
Yeah.
what always was looking at our own company providing services, providing training, providing consultancy. Um, we always like, oh, how fast can you grow? And not saying that growth is the holy grail. I'm just saying like, how can you actually get into an industry and reach people? Although there's a difference between that time and now, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It definitely helps if you have an audience. Having an audience is is a difficult thing for some people to build. But then, for people who have already built an audience, especially if the audience is very engaging and you start building products for that audience, I feel like, you definitely have a better chance. But it really depends on like your messaging and, focus groups, doing a lot of customer discovery. I think one of the things that I have seen the most value in, especially in our industry, there's something called customer discovery. Like there's immense value in, customer discovery, which is just basically talking to people, understanding what their needs are, and understanding what they're currently using that's not completely satisfying their requirements. And that's really what we focused on. We did not focus on building what everyone else is doing. We only focused on what the customer complaints are.
A quick question, because when I mean, this podcast could be like a customer discovery for, we have 30,000 users of the event canvas. And I remember when Will and I first launched it, and we published it under Creative Commons, and it was free to download, and you could get half the book for free. One of the most common questions we would get from people was, why are you giving everything away for free? And what's the catch? Or, what's your business model behind why you're doing all of this, right? So your app is open source. The code is available on GitHub, I saw, and obviously you're looking to perpetuate this across the community of those that are hard of hearing. Bit of an oxymoron that we're doing in the form of a podcast without captions at this moment, right? But we need to figure out how to better do that in the future. We'll write up a newsletter article and add some links to this as well that you'll find in the show notes of this podcast. But maybe back to the question, are people ever suspicious of your business model, and why are you doing it the way you're doing it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for the deaf assistant, I do have people who are suspicious. And initially, before conference captioning, it was like, okay, we have to sustain BeAware somehow, the deaf assistant. And it was like, yeah, just charge them, $50 a year, just like everyone else is doing. Like there's a bunch of apps for the deaf community, just do the same thing that they're doing, or show them a bunch of ads, but it was like, okay, like why, these people are already, you know, they don't get the same privileges that everyone else enjoys, you know, in a lot of different ways. They don't have the same job opportunities as everyone does. And so why add another bump into, trying to help enable them live their lives normally? And so we decided, to have no ads, to have, make our code open source, and then don't sell them any sort of subscription, and that really, I felt like resonated with a lot of people because when people download apps, they always wait for like 10 hours and then they'll see like, oh, it's blocked. You can, to do, you've crossed the number of hours allowed. And so we were like, no, we're not going to do any of those shady practices.
Mm.
Instead, we'll make money off of the organizations that serve the deaf and hard of hearing community.
Mhm.
And so if you want to have an event, you want to serve the deaf and hard of hearing community, here's an application and here's, we're using the technology that we know works for them. And, we packaged it perfectly for you. So for you, it's just 15 seconds and you have a QR code.
I think it's a really noble, but also very it's something that will make this grow fast, right? I think that's critical. Um, Now, many conferences always deal with the latest topics or the newest, trends and the newest things in certain fields. What would you say to people that are, using this in proprietary environments, or, you were saying universities or in corporate conferences? How, with the content being translated on device, is there any type of recording, or is there, do you build up a syntax or an idiom of a specific field of expertise? And how does that work when it's on device?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, uh, just a quick story before I get to answer your question. So at the event itself, at IMEX, there was an AV company, I'm not going to name them. They're major, and they had just signed a 1 year exclusive agreement with one of our competitors,
Hmm.
uh, the one with the aggressive sales team. And you know, uh, when I showed them my tool, and you know, I I explained to them, I was like, hey, we're using on-device AI, so we don't use the internet. They were like, wait, what? No way, and they were like, we still want to have a conversation, even though we just signed this 7 days ago. We still want to have a conversation because we still might be able to use you um, using a different tool because using our tool, there are these like the headphones. What do they call them? Silent.
It's like a silent disco type headset. Yeah.
Yeah.
For conferences. So you don't have the audio amplification in
Yeah, silent seminars. Yeah, silent
yeah,
seminars.
silent
Yes,
seminars.
they're pretty popular headsets that are used just like you mentioned, but at conferences instead of silent discos. And so we're able to incorporate with that technology so that they can actually hear the translation in real time. Just clicking one button. So just change the channel. So there's so much opportunity to integrate with other technologies. And so, you know, companies, to your question, they're learning that there's so much innovation possible today. and that even if they have already, been convinced, there's still so much more to learn, and that they should keep their eyes open, they should keep their ears open, and because stuff that they've invested heavily in can be so much more valuable and provide such an more amazing experience to people.
Mhm. Yeah. And when you talk about let's say because there's almost this vacuum cleaner effect of, if you hear all of the audience at conferences, I imagine like I'd love to be a fly on the wall in all the conferences on the world and, digest that content to get the latest of the latest because AI is based on the knowledge that is available online, I suppose, right? It tries to imagine what the next word is that we will be saying, and it tries to do the same thing in multiple languages for you. How do you ensure that the data that's generated by a conference is is kept proprietary, or is it ring fenced, let's say, for that conference, or is it then available to all? How does that work?
So that's an amazing question. So for our tool, compared to, everything else out there, we're using your device. And so your device is the one learning. And, we don't get to keep any of that unless you allow for us to store the transcript
Hmm.
uh, for you, but
Hmm.
we don't, so all of that, um, is your knowledge, I would say, is your proprietary data. So we don't steal any of it. We don't use any of it to train our models. Um, just to give you an example, our lowest accuracy model, it gives you an accuracy of over 95%. So it's at like 95.33, 95.66,
Hmm.
which is the requirement for ADA compliance or accessibility compliance in the United States.
Hmm.
And the latency is below 1 second. But our most advanced language models, AI models, are over 10 times that size. And they're contextual, which means that as you speak about a certain city, it
Hmm.
will start picking up the names of the streets. Like for example, in Detroit, there's a lot of streets that have French names. So while you're speaking English, you put in these French names and it'll actually pick them up because they're contextual models. And all of that knowledge is just, your device learns that. So it just gets better over time.
That's almost like your personal translator.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, or personal assistant that understands all your lingo and, is able to translate for you as well.
Yeah. There's so many questions that pop up, I'm sure, in the heads of our listeners right now and people that are interested in this kind of subject matter. And we could talk about this for hours, which I'm sure we will, but maybe not on the recording, right? What I'd like to do, Saamer, is maybe ask you two questions just to kind of wrap up the onstage part. And the first question is, um, what's currently on your horizon of change? If you look out at the world and the developments that you've gone through, you've just been to IMEX America, sorry, in Las Vegas. What's on your horizon of change for the upcoming year, or maybe a little bit beyond?
I think definitely, growth. So we're hoping to add a few more salespeople,
Hmm.
and so I think that's going to be huge for us. We're trying to make smaller technology upgrades as well. For example, the ability to network right now. So if you go to an event, you can network with people that are at the event, but now we're looking at how we can enhance that functionality. So for example, if you have a class and you want people in that class to be able to network with each other in a very easy way, right now there's no real good solution. And so we're, using the existing technology to be able to do that as well.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and so we're just trying to add like features that add more value to customers essentially. And yeah, those are the two main things that would be on our horizon.
And then the second question would be, would you be willing to return to this podcast 1 year from today and maybe reflect, listening back to this edition? Today is the 20th of October, 2025. And then next year, around this week, after IMEX Las Vegas, would you be willing to be invited to this podcast to reflect on the past year and to see how, the growth, and see if the sales capacity and the networking at events, be reminded gently by us of what you kind of stated in your Horizon of Change? Would you be comfortable coming back on our show next year and sharing a little bit more?
Yeah, for sure. Are you going to do level 2 next year, maybe on Monday?
You don't have to wait that long, Summer. We're going to have a level 3 class that you could join right into in San Diego in January.
Yeah.
Or we'll be in your neck of the woods or close to that at Purdue University in June next year. And then you can immerse yourself in the 3-day program in 6 months, in which you can become a certified event designer. So, the levels that we have, level 1 to 3, are not necessarily progressive, right? So they just get more intense. And instead of being on a design team in level 1 and level 3, you can actually learn how to facilitate an event design group, right? Like the way that Alyssa and Roel were taking you through the process. You could do
Yeah.
that with any type of group yourself, right? So I think this is something that we're very excited about, and we'd love to see if you would be willing to do that too and add it to your Horizon of Change. Who knows?
Yeah. Yeah, sounds great. Yeah, I would love to, be on the podcast again next year for sure. Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity, and it's great meeting you both.
Fantastic. That's it for this part of the onstage. We'll meet you backstage in just a moment. Make sure to join back in and hear backstage about Saamer's journey so far.
This has been another episode of the Design to Change Designer Conversation series. Explore conversations and additional content at designtochange.online. Want more right now? Tune into the backstage episode of this conversation and hear what the experts discuss off stage.